Chapter 3 is all about objectives, publics and techniques. Objectives from a public relations point of view. You cannot handle a public relations campaign if you haven't set an objective at the beginning. That's common sense, but it's amazing how many people forget it. If you don't know what you're trying to achieve, you can't measure it. If you can't measure it, you don't know if you achieved any success with it at all or not. So objectives need to be identified at the very start of a campaign. And what we look at are identifying SMART objectives. How do you make sure that the objectives you set for the client can actually be met? So are they reasonable? Are you both expecting to achieve the same thing? How are you both going to agree that you'll measure it? Objectives are the stick that you give the client to beat you with. At the beginning of any campaign, you say, this is what we intend to do. So now I'll show you the tools that I will use to achieve that objective. And at the end of the campaign, I'll be able to prove to you that I met the objectives we set at the beginning. If you don't get the right objectives, you can't meet them and the client won't be satisfied. If you set an objective very simply and say that you want to increase the level of knowledge of something, I might feel as a PR practitioner that if I increase that level from 5% to 7%, that was a huge increase. That's 50% more people are aware of whatever the idea was. The client might have thought that 5% would go up to 30%. So set the objectives carefully and we look at how you do that. Publics are very important in public relations. We never deal with the general public. The general public is splurge gun stuff. We deal with bow and arrow. So we divide the publics into different groups that we can target individually. Now we may overlap. You may end up talking to somebody who is an office worker in London, who is also a gardener, who is also a member of a chess team, who is also somebody who is studying in the local college by night. But each time you target that person, you will target them in that specific way. So you will target them as a student of the local college or as a gardener. And the objective of the exercise, if you like, is that all of those people are separate publics. They all develop a cohesive idea of who your business or your brand is, but they do it based on information that targets them wearing a particular hat. And we also look at techniques broadly at how important it is to think creatively. In public relations, you look at objectives and you think, how can I actually get the public interested? How can I make them curious about what it is that we're doing? We all have very low boredom thresholds. We don't need to know about 90% of the things that we actually find ourselves reading about or watching on video. So the creative thinking is, how do I come up with something that's so smart that you just can't help yourself watching it and afterwards think, yeah, that was interesting. That's what we try to achieve and teach in Chapter 3.